Welcome to This Week on the Grappling Rewind podcast. On this week's show, we're going to recap ADXC Fight Night 7 that took place last weekend, but actually happened while recording last weekend, so we are doing it this week. As always in the show, I'm your host, Maine, the co-host.
Miranda.
How you doing, Miranda?
Pretty good. How are you?
Doing pretty good. We're going to talk about some of the stuff that the UFC has planned and kind of some of the speculation we have about what we think the UFC is setting up with their grappling divisions.
Yeah.
They just signed Mikey Musumeci. He has a match coming up on the Fight Pass Invitational. We also were going to preview some of the other stuff coming up, or talk about some of the other stuff coming up over the next couple of weeks. This following week, or this week actually, is Thanksgiving here in the U.S., so there's no events happening U.S. side this week, but we have a bunch of them coming up early December. We have BJJ Stars 14 coming up December 7th, Nogi Worlds December 11th through 15th. We have the Fight Pass Invitational, which is what we think we want to talk about in the news section here for what the UFC is brewing. Combat BJJ Mexico, Medusa, and the EBI welterweights are all happening at a big Cancun retreat.
Yeah, there's like a 3-day Cancun madness.
Yeah, I think there's also another event. I think there's 4 events happening in Cancun that weekend. There's like another EBI.
It's probably like a qualifier or something maybe
like
for the welterweight tournament.
And then Who's Number 125 is happening on December 4th. So that's this week's show. Yeah, let's get into it. So biggest news, we talked about it last week with Josh. Mikey Musumeci signed an exclusive grappling deal. I think exclusive, right?
I believe so, yes.
That was what we were wondering last week, is like we didn't know if it was an exclusive deal or if he just signed like for an invitational or exactly what was going on. Now I think we know that it is an exclusive, kind of what he had with ONE FC.
Yeah.
Like he is now an exclusive grappler for UFC Fight Pass, which is really funny. Like they they qualify that. Like he's not signed to the UFC, he's signed to UFC Fight Pass, which I thought was a really funny, like, I don't know if we've seen that before, and he's the first one. So he's going against Felipe Machado.
He's the first like UFC grappler. We're the first. He's the first contract the UFC has done for grappling. Let's say it that way. And he says that in one of his posts. Normally he is pretty spot on with his information he provides. So he's taking on Felipe Machado coming up on the invitation, the Fight Pass Invitational on December 5th. We will preview that this coming week. It's a fun matchup. We'll get more into it next week. But UFC is also doing, seen some posts about this, and I've seen some posts about it. Yeah.
It looks like they're going to do, or planning to do, some kind of reality show akin to like The Ultimate Fighter or like Who's Next, or like we've seen other grappling shows do this, like the Kumite. Like it's been a thing people have done before.
Or like what we just watched recently with
PGF almost.
Yeah, PGF.
Yeah, PGF. So that seems to be like what's going on now, and what we've heard, or what we think we've heard, I don't know what's official, what's not official, is like Mikey was brought in as a coach for that season, which would make sense. Like why would you put Mikey Musumeci, a multiple-time world champion, one of the most pretty much in
if you put him
credentialed American ever. Like, it's like, cool. Who does Mikey Musumeci get to beat up? Like,
unless you do Mikey versus the world and make everyone go against him.
I mean, dude will hop into it. But, yeah, so that's kind of the rumor, is that he's been brought in as a coach. We really, as of this recording now, we don't know who else has been brought in under that kind of same contract structure for the UFC.
No one else has at least posted about it. Yeah.
So, that'll be cool. Again, I like the production for the UFC events. Polaris, what other events run on? Fight Pass Invitational, EBI, like all the events, all the production for those events is always usually really, really top notch. I think, again, Polaris and FPI have some of the best production of any event that we cover. Even the cards for Fury that are on there, like they're all produced very, very well. The UFC is no stranger to producing reality content with 20 plus years almost of The Ultimate Fighter. Like, I'm curious. I hope that they will at least put budget behind it. They had ADCC. Remember that? We kind of forget that they had signed ADCC, and the ADCC, due to their contract, wanted to stream all the opens, and that Fight Pass didn't really have the infrastructure behind the multi-streaming ability to be able to do that.
Yeah, but they had the smarts to put their logo on the mats, so that now when you watched it on Flow, you saw the UFC logo every single time you watched it.
They're sponsors. That was interesting. So again, I'm amped for it. It's more grappling content, more opportunity for us to see Mikey. Interesting enough, usually for these things, they have the two coaches go against each other.
Yeah.
I think because this is happening prior, that Felipe Machado is probably not the other coach.
Yeah, because that would normally happen after the season. Because they use the show in the season to kind of hype up.
If we're talking about like the Ultimate Fighter format, which again, I'm amped for it. I would love that. Your question is like, who do you get to sit on the other side of Mikey?
The other thing is, like, if you think about it, it's all centered around Vegas, right? Like the UFC headquarters is Vegas.
Yeah, the Performance Institute, the Apex, where everything is filmed essentially is right in Vegas.
And Mikey is now living in Vegas because he's back from
Singapore.
Yeah. And Vegas was his home base for years.
Oh yeah, I always kind of forget that he's like kind of out of Vegas. Mikey every 2 to 3 years moves around.
Switches coaches.
Yeah, switches coaches. And it's something he's done historically, which is, I think, for a lot of athletes in his situation, like, it does make a lot of sense. You're getting what you can out of your coach. You're really close with your coach, and then like you move on to the next. To, like, the next piece of information.
I always looked at it, in a positive note, because seldom do you really see people that do that and that do it and don't get like looked
Usually
down
people
upon
leave on bad terms.
Yeah.
Mikey consistently with everyone seems to leave on good terms. Like him and Kyle seem to be on good terms. His previous coach, like, there's like 4 or 5 coaches that he's been with over the years. I think, doesn't Lepre give him his black belt? Like something like that.
Probably.
Yeah.
I think so, and he's been with almost all the good schools for at least a short period.
Yeah, he's usually there for 1 or 2 world wins, 3 world wins, and then moves on to something. And that was with Cabrini, I think, still with Cabrini and Kennedy.
Yeah, and they're in Vegas, so that makes sense.
Which would make sense that now that's his home base, so he's fighting at home. Again, I'm amped for this. This is kind of, in my head, the biggest news this week is that we're potentially going to get like this weird reality show event out of the UFC.
And then he also made a comment about like wanting to do MMA, but I didn't know if like that was just some kind of like I wasn't understanding what he was trying to say,
or like I wanted to MMA, like will he actually do it or not? Like I think he was better off in one if he wanted to make that transition. He was going to do some Thai stuff when he was over in Thailand. Like we saw him train a little bit.
Didn't we see him train when he had a lady that was involved in kickboxing? Remember he had the relationship with some lady over there, and then they had like a joint account for a minute, and they were just doing boxing, or they were doing kickboxing classes together, and then she disappeared, and he went back to grappling.
Whatever.
But
again, Mikey Musumeci's done enough for the sport. The dude can go and do whatever he wants. I'm just happy to be able to call and talk about his matches in a couple of weeks. So anything else on the UFC? They're announcing matchups right now. Like Maggie Grandotti's on the card, Lucas Lira's on the card, her husband's on the card. There's some really good matches.
Pixley is on that card, and
versus Lucas Lira, and
the Who's Number One card, which is the day before.
Yeah, back to back, which is funny because I don't think the Who's Number One card is in Vegas. I think it's in Texas. But again, that's not a huge jump. You have Michael Pixley versus Lucas Lira on that card.
But you have him going against Nicky Rod at Who's Number One. You have Pixley.
Are they doing it again?
Isn't it Pixley Nicky Rod?
That was Fight Pass Invitational last time.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, so my brain is.
It's been a busy couple of weeks.
I've been running around the world for the last couple of weeks.
Oh yeah,
so
you were.
My brain has been.
Can we talk about Cali?
Yeah.
Okay, so. We're going to do it now in the outro.
It doesn't matter.
So, Miranda, you went out to do more card jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Can I say where?
Yeah.
At Kai Cenat's house.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool. If you don't know who Kai Cenat is, he is currently, I think now, he is the biggest Twitch streamer ever.
He has 500,000 subscribers.
Yeah, that's $5 or $6 a month.
Yeah.
He's an enormous celebrity. So, you were at that house for a couple of days.
Yeah.
But is it out yet or no?
It was live on his channel.
Okay, it was live on Kai's
channel.
So
my assumption is if you go back and you watch it, we were there. I was there for something called Guerrilla Games, which was really like, if you think about combat planking, think about holding a plank and trying to knock over someone that's also holding a plank. That was our first day, and that was in that one room, his quote unquote bedroom, but there's no bed in the room.
Yeah, the streamer room that he has.
We were in there.
If you've seen a Kai Cenat stream, that room.
If you watch that, I'm the chick that like bitch slaps the like 18-year-old kid, because I go to the one guy says collar tie, and I go to reach a collar tie, and because you're like in a plank and you go to reach it, like you kind of have to put oomph behind it, and I just wound up bitch slapping some kid in the face.
Jesus, Miranda.
But so we did that, and then we did Karjitsu like in front of the actual house.
The setup looked really cool. What I saw.
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, it was a little colder in California than I expected.
Yeah.
And it was a little more, normally in an event, you kind of have a schedule and you kind of work with that schedule. And this was a little bit different in that we were working on someone else's schedule. So you were told about 10 minutes before you were going to go that you were going to go. And, kind of, we're about to go in 10 minutes. Get ready.
You ready? You warm? I'm not warm at all. I'm not ready. Okay, we're doing it.
It was a wild setup. I need to work on my seatbelt chokes because I have no idea how those things work. And it's how I keep on losing. And yeah, it's fun. So
it's called so go back and watch it on Kai Cenat's stream, which is cool. Like that's one of the biggest showcases of jiu-jitsu that we've ever had. Which is
behind
wild.
The curtain, after one of our podcasts a couple weeks ago, I was like, "Hey, Maine, I got offered this thing," and I was like, "But I don't know if I want to do it because like I have my shoulders jacked right now."
Marina can lift like 10 pounds right now with that shoulder.
And I was like, my left shoulder's kind of jacked up, so I don't know.
And she's like, "Yeah, it's in California." And the way you did it, it's
I was
in California at some guy's
it's at
house,
some like podcaster's house.
And I looked at her and I went, just as a curiosity, is the guy's name? I was like, who is the biggest guy?
And I was like,
so I was like, Kai Cenat, and she went,
yeah.
And I went, do this, Miranda. And she went, okay, I guess I'm doing this. And I pulled up Kai's channel and she went, oh, I understand. This guy is enormous now. Yeah, we'll go and do this.
Yeah. Well, me and the other 3 competitors over there, we had no idea.
That's very
no idea who it was.
This is why I do all the back end stuff for the podcast.
Yeah. So we had fun. The day we missed Bill and I. Bill and I was there the day before.
Okay.
I wanted to see Bill Nye. My bad. Not Bill and
I didn't know what you're talking about. I was like, who's Bill?
You know who I'm talking about.
I love Bill Nye. Bill Nye is what got me into science in the first place.
He was there the day before we were there.
And one of the reasons that I'm a scientist in my real life.
But anyway. So yeah, I was there for that, and then I had to go away for work, and I've been running all over the place. So,
but you're back now.
Yeah, I'm back now.
So that is the news section for this week. Let's kick it off with a recap of ADXC 7. This one was main evented by Rodolfo Viera versus Derek Brunson. This kind of went how I expected it. Again, we know Brunson's a very good wrestler. He fights in the UFC. He's been in the UFC for a really long time.
Yeah.
I think he's been in the UFC so long. There are Derek Brunson fights where he still has custom shorts with sponsors.
Oh, yeah.
That's how long Derek Brunson has been in the UFC. So that gives you context. By the way, the Reebok deal would have been 2016, I think, was the Reebok deal.
Something like that.
14 or 16. So Brunson predates that. Veteran, Rodolfo Viera, world champion. This kind of went how I expected it. We saw Rodolfo Viera for a while in the UFC. Had some cardio issues in the UFC, principally. Again, still one of the best grapplers in the world.
His hands wrapped up for this match, too.
Yeah, both hands were super heavily wrapped up.
It probably means one of his hands is fucked up, and he just wrapped both of them. You know,
which is really what you should do as an athlete, like especially if you're competing at a main event in a major organization like ADXC.
Yeah,
like Derek Brunson's a gamer too. You're absolutely going to attack the hand that's the taped up hand.
Yeah, I was at a jiu-jitsu card event over the weekend, and there was a guy, and he had only one knee wrapped. And when you looked at his legs, the knee that was wrapped, that leg was like half the size of the other leg, and I was like, oh, that's the fucked up leg.
That's the
one you.
Unfortunately,
leg lock. That
is the one you go for because we are in a combat sport, and that's the game you play.
So, but anyway, yeah, he gets a really nice tripod pass in the second round.
Yeah, he takes Brunson down, which I wasn't surprised at. We know Brunson's a good wrestler, but again, Rodolfo's one of the best guys.
Well, I think Derek was also getting tired, and so his reactions weren't as fast. And Rodolfo kind of spammed 2 or 3, takedown attempts in a row, and just got Brunson kind of on the back of his heels.
And he kind of gets that. Honestly, the single leg that Rodolfo hits is pretty impressive. Like, he hits it, he grabs it, and then he just does like a standard like run the pipe single. You just kind of like pop, and you're like, oh, that is what I teach to people their first week for a single leg. It's just like you grab it, you pick it up, and then you do it.
Running the pipe is something that I can't do. Like, for whatever reason, that it just does not click in my brain. And for 10 years, I've been trying to do that, and it just doesn't work.
It is the one that I go to more than not.
Really?
Because it's the one I teach the most.
I do the back trip from there because I just don't. For whatever reason, I
did a lot too.
I never remember to turn the correct direction or to run the pipe correctly, and I do
the trip a lot because I stand up tall when I do it because I don't want to get guillotined. But yeah, Rodolfo Viera takes Derek Brunson down. Brunson grabs the guillotine. Rodolfo passes into the half guard on the cross side so that Brunson doesn't have the guillotine. Brunson realizes very quickly that he doesn't want to get Von Flu choked by Rodolfo Viera. Lets go of it, and then the next minute or two are really just Rodolfo Viera doing a high double underhook, not really a body lock pass, but just like a high tripod pass. Brunson does a great job recovering one time to butterfly guard. Rodolfo, really undeterred by this, just continues to kind of posture up. And he does something interesting because a lot of times guys, I've been watching people set up the head and arm from mount a lot recently, because the technique that I'm not great at, and I'm trying to kind of pull in our repertoire. So I've been watching a lot of footage on how guys are going from mount to actually getting the arm triangle on the outside. And you picked up something cool when when I was breaking this down and we were talking about it on the pre-show. You picked up something really interesting with how Rodolfo does this when he gets really high, and because Brunson's arm is initially kind of over his face, and you were talking about how Rodolfo is getting that arm back down.
Yeah, and it's you just kind of have to. He kind of rolls his shoulder. I can't explain it, but you kind of have to back yourself up to push yourself forward, because if not, you're across their neck, face. And as much as that sucks, no one's going to tap to it. Yeah.
And then you see Rodolfo when he rolls down and he comes off to the side. He does the traditional, a lot of guys nowadays are finishing this from mount. Yeah. You see Rodolfo Viera kind of because he's from the era where you finish to the side, falls off to the side and then just goes head to head here, and he's in kind of side control.
And keeping the windshield wiper across the hip to make sure that he doesn't.
Yeah, Brunson can't turn up and get away. It was, again, a beautiful head and arm pass. It's something that we've known Rodolfo for many a year. Yeah. But it was cool. It was just cool to kind of see him methodically deal with Brunson and be able to take Brunson down, get him this very, very old school traditional game, but still with a lot of utility in modern jiu-jitsu. This is something that will work pretty much on anyone. Yeah. And it doesn't. It's not one of those old school techniques that guys nowadays have had an answer to. This still kind of. Nicky Rod do this today.
Yeah. The other thing is Brunson. He wasn't really trying to stall from that position. So a lot of guys, when you get to that position, they know something like that's going to come, they kind of have this, they pull their elbows in and kind of stall in that position. And so then you have to kind of fight their elbows and kind of with your legs push their elbows up and get their arms over their head, where Brunson was more concerned about trying to get up and move. So he was kind of reaching a little bit more, so it gave Rodolfo the ability to kind of get under those arms and kind of control it, rather than having to fight from that position. Because most people that grapple, when you get to that position, everybody always does what was the match that lasted 2.5 hours?
Kyle Chambers and Isaac Michelle, but that was the back mount. But that was
it's
the home alone defense.
But it's the home alone defense from the top. Sometimes you get that too, and
where it's really hard. Again, this was neat. It was a neat old school Rodolfo finish where you just see Rodolfo kind of be a step ahead of Brunson and just beautiful passing, gets up. Again, the levels of jiu-jitsu are wildly different, but Brunson is still absolutely a veteran of it. He's no stranger to high level grappling.
Yeah, but it also showed that Brunson wanted to compete and keep on pushing the pace. He wasn't willing to sit there,
just hold there and hold the phone and kind of wait for nothing.
And a lot of he wasn't willing to stall out in any position to kind of.
A lot of UFC guys will do the opposite there, and we've seen it many a time.
A lot of jiu-jitsu men will too.
Also that as well. Yeah. Anything else on this one, Miranda?
Nope.
Awesome. Let's move on. Co-main event. So these are basic. That was no gi. This was gi. It was Paulo Miyao versus Junior Righetti. This was interesting, a little slower. It was 5 rounds. Paulo Miyao takes a decision here. He was very much in control all 5. It's 5 rounds, right?
Yeah.
Very much in control all 5 rounds.
This was the main event for the gis.
For the gi stuff. For the jiu-jitsu main event, what they called it. And the grappling main event was Rodolfo. Those are no gi matches. He gets close to a finish on Junior a couple of times, towards the end of 2 of the rounds. Yeah, he's either on his back or he's in mount. You can see Paulo working towards a finish, but just never able to get there. At the 5th round, I think is where he gets the closest. He's on Junior's back, and he's starting to set up kind of a rear naked choke. But Junior's doing a good job, just sort of being diligent, keeping his elbows in, keeping his hands in, keeping his neck protected, and that was sort of the match. He was always in it. But Paulo Miyao was always 1 or even 2 steps ahead in most of the sequences. Yeah. Paulo was usually on the top, usually on the back, or just moving through Junior's guard. And it was,
but this wasn't like your normal Paulo Miyao IBJJF match.
No, the pace was a little different. Paulo was really working towards the finish,
and there wasn't such a skill discrepancy, because a lot of times you see Paulo and IBJJF wreck people.
Yeah, homie's in my division.
I know, homie's
which is just that's how that would go.
He's in Master 2, and he loves wrecking dudes in Master 2.
Hey man, you beat guys at the age and weight and belt. They should separate it by how many years you've been a black belt, but that's a whole different discussion for a different day. Yeah. But yeah, Paulo Miyao here takes a decision. It was fun. Yeah. I would have. I would have liked it to be a little more movement, but Paulo was sort of very
Paulo also,
methodically
he
winning.
was doing some crazy shit, like almost putting himself into the cage in really weird spots.
Yeah, it was that was interesting. Earlier in the match, you saw Paulo like make some decisions on the cage where I kind of went, I don't actually know how much cage work you've done.
I don't think they don't have a cage in their gym.
No, they have a wall though. And
Yeah.
they have a padded wall in the back there.
Maybe he was trying to like invert off the wall.
That's kind of what it looked like.
You know what I mean?
Because
it did kind of look like he was throwing himself into the wall and then trying to like walk up it with his feet, which is a thing.
Oh yeah.
Maybe he thought he could like take his back from like walking up the mat or walking up the cage with his feet.
He was trying something. You could see Junior kind of in the first like 2 rounds, kind of shutting it down.
Only
and it was
because
like, okay.
when I was doing wall work, I remember Nick showing me like some kind of weird invert you could do off the side of the wall, and I was like, I don't know how to do that.
Wall work is neat. I'm getting more into like pit work because we now have a pit wall at our gym. And it's kind of reinvigorated my interest in wall work. And so watching, because we have more events than ever now, grappling is kind of in a weird spot where suddenly, like for a couple of years, it was mostly just mat.
Yeah.
And a couple of events, maybe a cage, they have some kind of gimmick. Nowadays, we have a lot of events on a mat. We have a lot of events on a cage, and we have a lot of events or more events in this pit format where it's just, there is no longer just one mat flat for grappling. There are now like, hey, an event, maybe a cage match, and maybe this match.
Yeah.
It is interesting, and it is funny to watch guys like Paulo Miyao that have primarily been flat mat grapplers their entire career coming to the cage and like, oh, look at that. He's trying something that we really haven't seen him do before at this stage, Masters 2, this stage of his career. He's won all his world titles, and he's still kind of like trying new stuff off the cage. It was kind of neat for that respect. Anything else there?
Nope.
Next one, we have a man whose name I've continued to mess up, despite his world titles. Miriam Maguire versus Sebastian Serpa. This had a really, I don't really want to talk about the beginning of the match. Miriam was in control of this pretty much through and through. The finish for this was really nifty.
Yeah.
Miriam is basically we were trying to come up with a name for the pass, and it has a name, but you described it as, it's the pass you do the gator roll. It's the pass you take the back of the gator roll like Tynan does.
Like you kind of spread. It's you spreading them out before you gator roll them. And I don't know what that's considered.
It's like a flat pass really far when basically you have someone inside control and you have an overhook on their top side shoulder.
Yeah.
And then with your lower hand, you're grabbing their low side leg. And so they're almost belly down towards you, but they're trying to keep base up to be chest towards you.
But you're also like coordinating.
Accordion?
Yeah.
Accordioning? But like that's a word.
That's kind of what you're doing with their body. You're kind of like,
you're lifting them out sort of, and then
kind of
they're forced to either belly down or belly up, and either way you can capitalize and roll through. Miriam does something really interesting from this position, because normally what you'll do here, if you're like a traditional guy, is you'll punch down the hip, you'll go to north-south, and you'll settle, because you pass specifically in this way to avoid people inverting into you and then re-getting their guard back. And so you pass the north-south, it fixes that problem, and then you get your points. Miriam starts to kind of do that, and then what he does is he does like a jump, like a cartwheel pass over the body in a way that's really uncommon, and then from there you see, we did it frame by frame here on ADX. You see him jump what looks like he starts to jump a triangle, realizes because he has the overhook on the arm that he was using on the backside of the shoulder to flatten Sebastian out, that he has the overhook on the arm so he can pull it for an arm bar. He goes, Sebastian starts to come up to him. He throws the other leg over to just finish a regular like cartwheel arm bar on the cross side. And it was just this neat little sequence that was like, that was a really uncommon finish that actually had a lot of like, it looked kind of like a scramble, but it also looked like he shot for the pass, the triangle, and then realized that his leg was in the right position, but he still had the arm and went, I can get the arm here too.
Yeah.
When guys do this and they go for the arm, typically you see the jump being less over top of the body. You see like a big spin towards the head, and they'll lift the arm up as they do it. Miriam, you could tell, was looking for the triangle, and then realized that he wasn't in the right position for the triangle, and then took the arm bar as a result. And it was just interesting to kind of watch it frame by frame to watch the difference of how he used his body.
And I wonder if it was like almost like he was gonna roll to do like a gator roll, and that was the initial cartwheel that we saw, but he cartwheeled it because maybe he noticed something wasn't there, and then it almost looked very free flowy. Like,
it looked like he was he was willing to run through the position and like be willing to put back into the guard.
But it wasn't like something you drill because it wasn't a position.
Yeah.
It was something that it's a reactionary like I can't do this, so I'm going to do this. It was a very much so like a
like
chess
he knows
move.
it's there. It's something. It's something he probably throws in the room, not infrequently.
Yeah.
But it is really interesting to see. Like it is. We talk about this. We haven't talked about this in a long time in the show, but a lot of times what you'll see in these like matches is you'll see someone or you'll train with someone.
Yeah.
That like for giggles will do a thing in the room.
Yeah.
And eventually, after like 6 years of them doing that thing in the room, it goes from being a thing they do for giggles to being like a really, really good thing that they've honed and everyone in the room knows they do it and they can still hit it. I am curious if this sort of pass to jumping far side armbar triangle combination began as that in Miriam's game. Because I think we've seen him do something like this before. I think his jumping over for the armbar, I think, is what won him World Pro a couple years ago. Or like in a match on his World Pro run to the finals. I think is something he's done. He's also... Every time we cover matches, he is weirdly long. He has really tall proportions for his weight class, and I'm curious if that also lets him like spread you out and turn you enough to make the distance he needs to cartwheel over you. But regardless, it was a really neat finish that we don't see a whole lot, and it was very organic and it
was fun.
I'd be curious if it's something that he drills or it was like you said in the moment like, oh, it's not there, I'm just gonna take this instead.
Yeah.
It was neat. We had Peter Frank versus JZ Cavalcante, Josias Cavalcante. This was a decision for Cavalcante. It was fun.
Yeah.
And honestly, Peter Frank so JZ Cavalcante can sometimes have slower matches. And that's sort of what we've criticized him for in years past, was that sometimes he can get kind of lulled into boring matches, especially late.
Yeah.
And these are 3 5-minute rounds, so they tend to be the specific kind of matches that Cavalcante tends to like
slow down,
push you into the fence. And to his credit, man,
well, he's also jacked.
But that's kind of why he's always slowed down.
But I mean, he kind of leverages that weight and that body placement against you. And so with Peter Frank, you can't really do that because the minute you do that, he might do something bizarre to you. And
he'll just like what we love, and I think both of us love about Peter Frank is that he's a guy that very much will just lay the chips down and like, hey man, I'm just gonna do a jumping attack. We're gonna see where this goes. I don't really care if I'm in the guard. You're on the guard. Doesn't matter.
And if you watch his facial expressions, he's just like, okay, tried it, didn't work. You know.
There was a neat sequence here, and so it's a decision. Basically, Cavalcante is into the legs a little bit more than Peter Frank. He looks like he's getting the better bites on stuff. Looks like he's maybe the aggressor and pushing Frank around a little more. I think, in my eyes, that's probably what gets the decision.
Frank also is
smaller than him.
Is a more and a gi. Like a more of a gi player than a
no-gi.
Like
we do see him in both.
We see him take no-gi matches, but we see him do a lot more like big
IBJJF and stuff. He's almost always in the gi.
Yeah.
Like I think I am more used to seeing and covering Peter Frank matches
just
in the
because
gi.
because he does the flying arm bars from everywhere.
And he can do it in no-gi, but like that setup he has in the gi is really good.
It's harder to get the grips, and and that leads into what you were going to start talking about is Cavalcante grabs Frank around the waist, tries to kind of like start to bully him down.
So it's basically like it's the there's a term for it in wrestling. I don't know the term anymore. You don't have a body lock on someone. You're face to face. You go for that overhook on collar tie, and then you basically grab. You have your hand around one arm, and your other arm is around their waist. So it's basically over under, but you have kind of a body lock. Peter Frank realizes this and goes, "Okay, cool." Backs out. When the guys come together again, you see Peter Frank kind of start to go for what looks to be like a high leg harigoshi, like that big hip throw off the stop. Jay-Z in the middle of this stuffs it, gets his hips in front of it so that Peter Frank's basically going to have no leverage. Peter Frank realizes he's getting stuffed, then jumps for like a Kane Basano, like a scissor leg takedown. Jay-Z continues to stuff it, just turns the angle and just takes Peter Frank down.
And just flattens
It was
him
a
out.
really neat little sequence of just like cause and reaction.
And I think part of it was if you go for like any kind of harigoshi or like across the body throw, and somebody has a body lock and has not a full body lock, but like that grip where they're around your waist with both their arms, if they can get their hips into you faster than you could throw them, they can like suplex the fuck out of you. Like straight
that's
back,
what you saw when we
straight
watched
back
it.
on your neck.
Yeah.
So
that big 5-point
he almost
throw.
comes in to like, I'm gonna check you over my head, and Peter Frank kind of throws his leg between Cavalcante's legs so that he can't get picked up.
You do that inside leg hook that if you ever get suplexed, you always throw your leg into the inside of their leg because it doesn't allow them to get over the outside of the rib cage to
or
chuck.
like even like a mat return, same sort of thing. Like you don't really stop it, but they can't get as much height on it.
They can't get as high, and they can't as easily turn you. Like they can still turn you and take you down.
Unless there's a significant like weight and
stiff
size.
dies or something different. Yeah.
But
yeah, it was just, I really liked this sequence because it was just, again, the thing that I like watching jiu-jitsu more and more nowadays, the more you watch, the more you kind of understand, as kind of any sport goes. When you watch technique, reaction, counter reaction to that, counter reaction, it's like, oh, cool. Like I saw the thought process for both guys, and you can watch in real time, like body lock to counter body lock to breakout to hip throw to counter to scissor leg to counter to lift
and
to
Frank
turn.
has some real fun arm bars from this position, but they're in the gi, so you have those grips to hold on
that material.
So it looked like at least he thought, I'm not going to do that and fall to my face, and at least try to go into the legs from that position. And then at the very end, as Cavalcante's going after his legs, he just starts doing sit-ups.
He's doing sit-ups while Cavalcante is in like a heel hook. It's like not a good heel hook, but going for it.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I'm not a huge fan for ADXC is that
the attacks.
The people will spam leg locks that aren't really anything,
but
and it seems like ADXC is very.
I feel like that is
for that.
But I feel like that is a lot of your sub-only events that will give submission attempts, or even like 1FC, like that give submission attempts
for catches.
Kind of weight. Yeah. Because then it becomes that weird space of like.
Josh and I talked about this. Do you, for the ankle lock grip, like, do you give it advantage? And we had a whole discussion last week on like IBJJF about the crown. We had a match that was like, you have the ankle lock. Do you give him? Sorry, I cut you off there.
No, it's exactly what you're saying. Like, how serious does something have to be to actually count it? Yeah.
And it's like we've had this discussion. It's my point I make for this for years and years and years. You have Paulo Miyao on a heel hook. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, give him an ankle lock. Like, it doesn't matter. He's never going to tap to it, so it doesn't count. And you're like, I don't know. Because on one hand, like, well, yeah, I have him in a heel hook. I'm injuring him. I should get awarded for that. On the other hand, well, if he doesn't tap, does it matter?
Well, and he doesn't defend.
Right. It's like, doesn't matter. And so it's been the funniest argument for the past 10 years on this show, and even before this show, of like, how do you score sub attempts when you have guys like Paulo Miyao, where it's like, well, it doesn't matter. It's like, well, how would you score it then? You kind of have to pick a side for either camp of like, well, when it's in, I score it, or when they defend, I score it, or when it actually should be doing damage, I score it. But you have to make some weird objective call there, and it makes these kind of scoring just interesting because you have to make a decision for what your event, your organization is going to do.
Yeah, but it also almost creates and like breeds like really shitty jiu-jitsu ability.
Where you grab the ankle lock and like you look at the ref and you're like, it's a grip.
Where you're grabbing toe holds that aren't really.
You have no control of the foot. You're not going to turn.
Actually,
we saw some of that too as well.
I mean, I do that in the room just because.
But it's in the room.
That's me being me.
But yeah, I think it's reasonable. I think Jay-Z getting this is a good decision. But again, we do see throughout this card and throughout some of the earlier ADXC cards, we do see some of the like the footlock spam, and we've been seeing it. I think it's rising again because I think everyone's now gotten good enough at a lot of the defense where we're seeing like the ebbs and flows of the footlock game of like. No one grabbed him. Everyone grabbed him. Everyone finished him. Everyone grabbed him. Kind of finished him.
Yeah.
Everyone grabs him now and very rarely finishes him. And I think we're going to see this. I think we just continue like most techniques. See an ebb and flow of it.
Yeah. Who knows what position will get exciting next? Yeah. You never know.
So next.
As long as it's not like the submissions from shitty positions.
Yeah.
Meta. I don't like that meta. But anyway.
You mount me and then I go for the heel hook off the bottom. It's like, hey man, that doesn't work anymore because it works like up until purple. Yeah. And then once you get a good guy like a purple that just goes, yeah man, I know what you're gonna do. I'm gonna stop you. And then it goes, oh, it doesn't work anymore. I'm in mount.
I was thinking more buggy chokes, but
buggy choke. There's that too. Yeah. I mean, let's get side control and buggy choke you like.
Yeah, let me let you get this horrible position on me, but then I'm going to.
Well, but also you see that run out of steam a lot for a lot of guys too. So, moving on. Good jiu-jitsu. Anna Carolina Viera versus Ariella Laverne. This was close, and we watched this back, and we kind of were talking about this on the pre-show. I think there's a rule set where Anna Carolina can win this. I think there's a rule set here, obviously, where Ariella Laverne wins this. This would be kind of something we talked like. I'm always curious exactly what ADXC's scoring criteria is. I think in my eyes, because Ariella Laverne wins this, she's in the blue corner. I think she ends up on top in more of the sequences. I think Anna Carolina Viera here was a little more aggressive, especially in round 1 and in round 2, 3-round match.
But I think Laverne has more submission attempts too, because she's going after the legs. Anna
Carolina had a lot of those guillotine attempts, but they never really. This is where you kind of got to wonder, like, okay, the guillotine attempts, they were good attempts, but they were never really close to being finished.
But then you look at Laverne's leg locks, and they
toe hold,
and they were the same way.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like a weird, like, are you putting more weight into submission attempts that aren't working than choke attempts that aren't working?
So that's what kind of.
Or is it that your judges have more experience in chokes, so they know which chokes are going to work and which ones aren't? But less experience with leg locks, so they might think that a leg lock is good when it's actually not good.
It's kind of this is kind of the thing when it comes to decisions. I think that Laverne gets this because in more of the sequences she ends up on top. She ends up pushing pressure from the top after usually like a jumping guillotine from Anna Carolina Viera,
and she looks a little less gassed.
Yeah, she just looks a little more in control. I think there's a good argument to give Anna Carolina the first 2 rounds. Yeah. There's a good argument to give Ariella Laverne rounds 2 and 3. Yeah. I think that's inevitably how she wins, but it was a fun match. Other than like the footlock sequence that was a little, Ariella Laverne goes for like a toe hold, and then Anna Carolina immediately like counters and gets on top, and I was like, that was an interesting position.
Bad decision on.
And then Anna Carolina ends going for like a knee bar off it that Ariella pulls out. There was a whole kind of like a little bit of sloppy kind of leg lock back and forth there. But again, if your criteria is submission attempts and activity, then as the athlete, that is absolutely like it. That is what I'm guessing the criteria is here for, because both athletes were doing that, and both of them we know have absolutely amazing world level control on some of these, and you saw them being very willing to just kind of go for it.
But you didn't see the game that either of them plays at like IBJJF.
Yeah, very different.
It was a lot, for this match at least, it was a lot less control and a lot more like spamming,
which I like, and I like that. I like when you can see an athlete have a different kind of match and a different rule set, because that means the promoter is probably doing a good job of explaining to the athletes in the pre-fight meetings, like what their criteria is, which is important. Like if you want to have a rule set that is not like a very, very well-defined, long-standing rule set. I mean, I've done media for a lot of years. I've been in a lot of those meetings where they call the athletes back, and I go there because I'm media. And like they give the athletes the rundown, like, hey guys, if you're in the bottom and you're doing this, like you're gonna lose the decision. And then they give the criteria for what those organizations are looking for.
I said this this weekend. I was back in a Rolls meeting, and they basically bluntly said, like, if you're in the bottom, even if you're spamming attacks, like if someone's on top of you, they're winning.
Yeah. So you communicate to your athletes
as long
clearly
as everyone
what the rules
knows
are.
that. You know, then it doesn't become as iffy as, you know, when you don't say that, and then you have the person on the bottom get butt hurt because they don't win.
Just communicate your rules. Yeah. So again, I think the ADXC probably does a very, very good job at doing that, because you have a lot of athletes that their games in ADXC look very different than either World Pro or in IBJJF or Police. Like, it looks like they're having an ADXC match, and I can appreciate that because it means they're doing a good job.
It seems like they're also they also understand what looks good for TV and what looks good for an event, because kind of like when they do the gi matches and they tie their belts, and
they tape them.
They tape their belts after they're tied.
I don't have to watch a guy tie his belt for 37 minutes over and over
again.
Because
we all know that's the way people breathe. You know, they do that, and then they take a few seconds breathing because they have to turn their back when they tie their belt, because they can't look at you when they tie their belt. Because
I look at them. I'll look at you in the face and tie them out in front of you.
I don't subscribe from that. Yeah, I don't subscribe to that theory, but like the old school guys won't look at you as they tie their belt, and like, so it's like this whole like dramatic like thing that they take away by making making them just, you know, tape their belts.
Which I like. Again, I like a
that.
lot of what ADXC is doing. So Ariel Laverne takes this match. It was close. It was good. It was a very good back and forth match, and both women kind of fought out a little bit outside of type for their standard game, which I really appreciated. Next match, we have Espen Mathisen versus Lucas Valente. This match was not outside of type. This was exactly what both guys do. This was bolo, counter bolo game. They keep giving Espen Mathisen guys that are going to do this, and I'm kind of like, I'm not against it.
Yeah.
This one was definitely very, very technical, but very, very slow. Not slow, but like, you could see that Lucas wanted a very specific set of grips to start his bolo, and you see that Espen wanted a very set of grips to stop Lucas from going to the bolo. First 2 rounds, Lucas pulls first to go for the bolo. Third round, Espen pulls first. Really, the most action happens in the last, like, 15 seconds of ending of all 3 rounds.
Yeah. And the last round, you see Espen almost gets a crab ride to take the back from there, but like can never really get under because Lucas just keeps on grabbing his feet whenever that happens.
And that is the entire match.
That is most of the match.
That's all 3 rounds. It's a great kind of masterclass in, hey, here's how to stop a world class Berimbolo guy. This is how to do it. You see Valente
I guess the only way you like I was trying to think how the Aussie
Tynan stopped Levi Jones-Leary.
How Levi Jones-Leary gets away with doing it, but Levi Jones-Leary also is from the Unity camp where they don't care about leg locks.
Yeah, and also like, Lucas. Also, like, he's the best guy in the world.
But I wonder if you put Lucas next to Levi, if Levi could bolo Lucas.
I think Lucas is much smaller.
Okay.
Lucas is like when I interviewed Lucas Valente 2019, I think 2020. And he's a little bigger than me, but not that much bigger than me. Yeah, and Espen's also not that much bigger than me. Either. So it's like I think that I would love to see it. Again, I want to see all the bolo guys go against each other because it's always kind of fun.
They all have like different bolo games. So I'm always curious how certain people deal with it. And Levi Jones-Leary in the Unity room where they're told not to tap the footlocks. You know, you basically...
Please tap footlocks, guys. Yeah. I want to see your careers go long and not have horrific injuries because you didn't tap a footlock. Well, we also
don't, we don't want to see you walk like a penguin for your entire life.
We just talked about Paulo Miyao. That's what he walks like now.
Yeah.
Lucas Valente takes this one. I think it was reasonable. It's a very coin flip match. It's you give it to either guy. I'm not mad at it. I would have liked to see either guy be able to get something going, but it is totally an understandable result to the match because this is kind of how both guys play. They play for that back take. They play for the ad. They play. You bring these guys in against each other. This is the game that they're going to have. You put them in the gi. This is the game they're going to have. So I'm not really mad at it. This is what we expected, and it was interesting to watch both guys be able to stop each other's Berimbolo.
Yep.
So next one, we had Henrique Sassone versus Javier Zaruski. Zaruski is the guy that was the late replacement for ADCC from Israel. It's a decision. Henrique Sassone takes it. I think activity and leg locks.
Yeah.
Sassone is just more active on the leg locks like we saw in earlier matches. That's what we saw here. Next one I want to talk about. Anything on that one?
Nope.
We have Helena Cravar versus Sabrina de Souza. This was the second round.
Yeah.
Cravar very much in control in the first round, but Sabrina's doing a good job getting out of the arm bars, posturing up, kind of doing stuff that we saw similar to Nia Blackman do, where it's like you know where Cravar wants to play. You kind of stay directly. I'm watching that trend here. If you stay directly over top of Cravar when she's going for triangles and arm bars, you can beat her posture out. Then when she drops off and goes for the legs, if you back out and you can beat her in the back out, you can readdress her guard. It's just a really interesting like in and out strategy that we kind of saw Sabrina de Souza be able to start working here.
And she also, she was a little muscly, like a little more muscly.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think with Cravar, you almost have to bully a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's that weird range of like, how hard do you bully? Do you bully? Because if you over bully,
you get triangled. You get egg. You get low.
That's what I mean. She just gets you. But you have to, when you get into certain situations, you have to kind of bully yourself out and then readjust and come back. And I think that's a hole that is now seen in her game, where like you can at least survive a little bit longer if you know how to play that, that game.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you kind of survived longer. We've talked about Crovar's highlights, and a lot of the matches that we see her in our big highlight matches. If you watched her career as long as we have now for the last couple of years, I think we really started to watch her game in 2021, I think is when I started watching her, because I remember watching her matches at the World Open at ADXC 2022. And we knew who she was then, but it was like we didn't know. Maybe it was like late, early 22.
We saw her lose to Clay
at trials, but
that was one of the that's one of the first times I remember, and that was only because I was like, oh, that's the ponytail girl.
Oh, that might have been 80s. That might have been the West Coast trials.
It was
in
West Coast.
2021,
because it was also
22.
The little wrestler chick that did a seminar that Baltimore.
Oh yeah.
She was in it too.
I'm blanking around.
You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yep, I know exactly what you're talking about.
I remember watching them because I remember we were right on the rail there when they were going on in front of us. And that was the first time I can really think about knowing who she was and seeing her and being like, oh, that's the the really young ponytail chick.
21. Yeah, I think she was like 16 or 15 at the time. Yeah. So she's had matches, if you've watched her career as long, that necessarily aren't immediate subs. Like she has a lot of immediate subs, but she also has a lot of matches where you can posh out of a triangle. I think people have kind of gone back and seen the areas where you can kind of trouble her if you are able to be diligent enough and on that level. Again, second round comes in, Crovar, more of the same, is able to get into the legs. Really, really great control as she kind of goes from a heel hook to another heel hook to a knee bar, and then goes back to the outside heel hook here, or the inside heel hook on like the knee barred leg. Really, really great finish. Really, really good control. Like the grip here that Crovar uses for the heel hook is interesting. It is way further up on the arm than I would expect. She is way more towards the elbow on the heel hook finish than traditional. Like nowadays we see occasionally, because again, I think she has really, really good mechanics. Yeah. Obviously, she's low enough where even though the heel is high up near her elbow, you still can't get out because she's extended enough where you can't heel slip past like the meat of the arm. Yeah. But it was not surprising. It was an interesting higher finish than I am used to seeing nowadays, because most people really go to the forearms.
She also had like her knee like pinned between her legs, so it was like you probably had a lot I against your knee at the same time.
This is like the best position to heel hook from, in my opinion, because they can't roll, they can't spin. You're locked down completely. If I ever go for like a failed knee bar and then turn it into a heel hook, you end up in this position, you're done, because they can't roll through either direction. You block their hip down. Beautiful position to heel hook from, and it was awesome to see Crovar kind of pummel her legs in order to block Sabrina from being able to high leg over or do anything else. She gets stuck in this leg out position and gets heel hooked. And it was just, again, another really nice finish for Crovar. But yeah, having that hand a little higher up on the heel hook was just interesting to me specifically. Anything else on that?
Nope.
Next matches, that's all we have. That's ADXC was good. I think it was like $10 on pay-per-view, which is pretty reasonable for the level of competition that was here. Some stuff that, like honestly, commentary is great. Howell on commentary is good. We have Brawley with Steam on commentary was good. We have Vanessa Demopoulos on commentary that I don't think, I've had some issues with her commentary before. This one was fine. I think she had some good pieces. They did a little video that was a pre-fight where they broke down kind of all the matches that I really, really liked. And it was overall like a really good bet. $10, I think, for this level of card in Brazil is phenomenal. Again, I don't love paying for pay-per-views week to week to week, but I think for a card like this,
$10.
It was a lot.
$10 isn't bad.
It's what you're gonna spend on like coffee and a donut. At a Starbucks or something like that. So it was good.
It might have only be a coffee, because like I can almost promise you.
I don't drink Starbucks.
I can almost promise you the last couple days in my travels, I've drank a lot of Starbucks coffee, and they're like $8 a pop.
Holy shit! Yeah, I had a really, really early meeting a couple last week I got to the place like at 6 a.m. or I get to the place like 5:36 a.m. Yeah, and then by like 9 or like 8 I needed coffee, and I went to a Starbucks, and I hadn't had Starbucks in years, and I was like, ooh, this is a little like. This is not the coffee that I'm used to. No. And it was the first time in forever I'd had it. But I think that's all we have this week. Really just I just wanted to cover ADXC because it was a cool enough card and it was happening during recording last week. I thought it was very much worth it to talk about some of these guys. A lot of athletes that we consistently see on the ADCC scene, on the IBJJF scene. And again, more matches from Cravar, which I like covering Cravar. I like watching Espen Matisse whenever he's on ADXC. He plays a really unique and interesting game. Peter Frank and Cavalcante. Paulo Miyao still out there. It was a fun card, worth $10 to me. Next week, anything else, kind of closing thoughts on the card?
Nope.
Next week, we are going to preview
BJJ Stars 14 and Fight Pass Invitational.
Mm-hmm.
And who's number 125?
Yes. So those will all be next week. Those are fun cards. I'm looking forward to it. You're here next week, right?
Yes, I am.
Cool. So we will preview it then. Miranda, anything else you got going on this week?
No. I'm trying to think. No, this is
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving holiday, so it's I have a lot of days off, so I get to train a little bit more.
Everything right now is screaming for me at work, and so it's like, cool, I'm not going to take any time. I'm taking off Thursday.
I'm going to take the week off because the following week I have to start getting back into federal evidentiary hearing chaos in Oklahoma. So back to Oklahoma, which is fun times. So
shout out to Oklahoma.
Yeah. I've spent so much time in Oklahoma, though. One of the girls that was on the what's it called, the Jiu-Jitsu event with me is from Tulsa.
Okay.
So she told me where to go, but my evidentiary hearing is the week before Worlds, Nogi Worlds. So I'm like,
everyone, do you want to hop into a Worlds camp the week and drop in?
Yeah, I'm like, and it's where Hunter Colvin.
Okay, with Brothers guys.
Yeah, that's the gym. Because Brothers is outside of Tulsa.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
And I was like,
those guys always seem really cool when they train with.
Yeah, and I mean, it is what it is. As long as sometimes you just have to, in your brain, say, this is the end of a World's camp, Miranda. You are going to get your ass kicked for an hour, and you're going to enjoy it. So just enjoy it, Miranda.
Yeah,
and
Zach and I went to, where's the place? Oklahoma.
Yeah.
With John Hansen's.
No, not Oklahoma. He's in, not Iowa.
Omaha.
Nebraska.
Wrong name.
You were thinking Omaha.
Omaha, yeah. No, Oklahoma. Not Oklahoma. Nebraska. To end of John Hansen's camp, 2022. And realized that it was like, those guys are having world team. Like, it was a UWW Worlds camp and the end of John Hansen's ADCC camp. And we were there for the last big day, and it was just like a bunch of dudes that are pushing 3 bills.
Yeah.
That are all very experienced black belts coming in to just give Hansen work. And I was like, this is so fun. I was like, I think I was like a year off of surgery, so I was just getting back into training. I hadn't anticipated on training that much, and it's like, I remember here. So training in that camp was just getting demolished by guys, and it was a lot of fun. I want to go back out there to do that again. But yeah, that's all we got going on. I'm off for a couple weeks for training because my knee is still being wonky, and I'm finally taking my own advice and taking a couple weeks off because my wife and I were driving to the gym to run our open mat on Sunday.
I'm just learning to adapt and overcome.
Yeah, I was doing that, and then my wife's like, "You need to take time off," and I was like, "Okay, my club's down for the week for Thanksgiving break, so let me just take this week and next week off." Hopefully, after the injury for my knee 6 weeks ago, it'll finally heal. My cauliflower will heal. My eardrum will heal. All the other weird stuff I got on will heal. And then we'll be back at it. I'll be happy and training again in a couple of weeks. So that's the goal for me.
Good times.
But anything else, Miranda?
I don't think so. I think that's about it.
As always on the show, I'm your host, Maine, joint co-host,
Miranda.
And we are the Grappling Reruns. And that's what it is. Stay safe. If you like the show, please consider sharing it on Facebook with the folks at your gym. It's the best way that we grow the show, and we really appreciate it. You can reach out to us on email.
We also have Instagram. We have Facebook. We have Twitter. We have Google+.
Until that shuts down.
We have a website.
If you have an event you would like to have us cover, please let us know. If you have a name, like most people do, and you'd like to have us stop butchering it,
let us know.
Reach out to us. The show is also available on YouTube, Spotify, in addition to iTunes and every other podcast service. We very much appreciate your time, and thank you.